This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Between two-factor authentication, strong passwords, and a VPN, you try to be in control of how your info is protected. But many other places also have it, and they might not be as careful. That's why LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast for 40% off. Terms apply.
The NBA playoffs are here, and I'm getting my bets in on FanDuel. Talk to me, Chuck GPT. What do you know?
All sorts of interesting stuff, even Charles Barkley's greatest fear.
Hey, nobody needs to know that.
New customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets if you win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
21 plus and present in Virginia. Must be first online real money wager. $5 deposit required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable bonus bets that expires 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See full terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Hello and welcome to the Oregonian Sports Podcast. I am Bill Oram, joined as always by Brenna Greene from KOIN 6. Brenna is refreshed after a little early summer vacation to Omaha, Nebraska for the College World Series. Brenna, welcome back from the Men's College World Series, where Oregon State played some thrilling games. Really had some exciting moments. Ends up coming home after losing its final 2 of 3 games. Beat Louisville in the opener, loses to Coastal Carolina, and then loses to Louisville in the consolation bracket. But Brenna, I want to start elsewhere. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about Omaha. We're going to talk about your time in Omaha, your experience, who you got in the final, Coastal Carolina or LSU, if you have an opinion. But the news of the week is what popped up on the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office's list, whatever you call it, directory, not directory. What popped up on their website this week, publicly available information, which is that the WNBA has filed 4 trademarks for the name Fire. So I am going to, background, Portland Fire was a WNBA team in Portland from 2000 to 2002. Team folded when Paul Allen went bankrupt, or when Paul Allen put the Moda Center into bankruptcy, the whole thing. Team is coming back, WNBA franchise awarded last year. Signals would be that the team is going to be named the Fire, although I suppose there are other reasons why you would patent those, but at this point I don't think that's the case. So Brenna, what I want to know is, are you in or are you out on Portland's new WNBA team being renamed the Fire?
Well, I know where you are. I did read your column. As he takes a sip of his mug. I have some thoughts.
There's nothing even in here. This is just a prop.
This is a prop. Yep. A prop for our podcast that most people listen to instead of watch, probably. But anyways, yeah. Okay. So first of all, I want to acknowledge that if there is a target demo for this name, it's me. I was 8 to 10 years old when the Portland Fire was in existence. I have a lot of fond memories of that team. And so for me, I personally do not have an issue with it. I also understand the idea of wanting to have your own unique name. It's obvious to me from back channeling things that this ownership group tried to do that, and it was very difficult. And I mean, you can just look at, Cleveland's getting a team. Cleveland didn't even try. They just said, we're the Rockers, period. End of story. We're taking it back. Which I'm not a huge fan of that name, but whatever. So they didn't even try to get a new name. They waved the white flag immediately and said, yep, this is what it is. Because it is very, very difficult to name teams with trademark and IP and everything else. So, I think at least this ownership group tried compared to the Cleveland ownership group that just said, we're not going to even try. I know that you have issues with it being named after a natural disaster. I do not possess those same strong feelings. Ultimately, I'm fine with it. I think that it's better than what a lot of the other alternatives could have been. And I don't know. I'm not somebody who gets too hung up on team names unless they are absolutely disastrous, in which case, yes, you should get hung up on those names. So, like I said, I understand that I'm coming from this from 8 to 10-year-old Brenna Place. I am the target demo if there is a target demo for that name. So I personally do not have a lot of issues with it. But I know you do. So why don't you take the floor, Bill Oram?
So I would say that I also feel like I fit into the target demo outside of,
not being a female.
That.
Yeah.
But like I also was a fan of the Portland Fire. I attended games with the Portland Fire. Mm-hmm. My first time sitting courtside at a sporting event was watching the Portland Fire and rushing home to Hebo to watch the game on the VHS that we had taped it on to see if I could see myself sitting courtside on the baseline on the Lifetime network. So I have huge fondness for that team. Sylvia Crawley, Jackie Stiles, Michelle Marciniak, Ann Donovan was the coach. Mike Barrett was on the broadcast. Like there's a lot of nostalgia with the Portland Fire. My issues with the name are multifold. So like your point with the Rockers, I'm not opposed across the board to bringing back, a retro name. Like the Portland Timbers came back, they should be the Timbers. The Sonics return to Seattle, they should be the Supersonics. The Cleveland Rockers works for me because one, it's a badass name. Two, it is a symbol of the city. Like, one of the things that Cleveland is best known for is the Rock and Roll Museum, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So like you are honoring a local and cultural point of pride with the Rockers. I don't think the Fire does that. The Fire doesn't symbolize anything about Portland that, represents us, or it's like, speaks to our uniqueness as a city or as a market. Yep. And so if you're looking at the name as a symbol of the city, it is a symbol that is only evocative of things that are, in my opinion, quite negative. When you're talking about wildfire, that over the last 10 years, and certainly in the 23 years since the Portland Fire left as a WNBA team, has become more urgent and more existential and more present in our regular lives. Like, yes, there was wildfire. There's been wildfire throughout history, but with global warming, with obviously rising populations, we have seen much more destructive wildfires in the last, 10 years than we were seeing up to that point in history. And that's not just in Oregon, that's throughout the West. So it's a crisis that we're also kind of wrapping our arms around and learning how to live with and navigate. I think that's why fire strikes the wrong note for me. It's as I said, multiple things, but it's that I don't think it's a good name for our city. I think there's so many things that Portland and Oregon and the region represent to the world that there had to be something else. And I obviously, you make a great point, and I do not dismiss at all the challenges of naming a team. The licensing, the IP, the trademarking. Lisa Bethal-Mirage has talked about that. Like she said that, they've gone through a lot of options. And so I don't know where fire falls on the list. And I guess I will continue to make the point and have the caveat that we don't know definitively that this is the end of the discussion and the team is going to be called the Fire. I think all we have is the kind of obvious breadcrumbs pointing that way, but go ahead.
I was just going to say, if they were not going to be named the Fire, they would have come out with a statement yesterday.
I think they would have clarified. And, the WNBA has had nothing to say. Raj Sports has had nothing to say. So I agree with you. I think that we would have gotten some pushback. I mean, like, I think I specifically would have gotten some pushback if it was not going to be the Fire. So I think it's kind of I think it's generic for a very non-generic city, for a city that, you know, that has brought the world the sports.
I can understand that.
That is billing itself as the global epicenter of women's sports. And then to have just a generic name doesn't fit the movement that we're part of right now. And so I think it's a miss for me there. And then when you think about what it actually represents to the people who be watching these games and cheering for this team, like largely Fire is, you know, currently a threat to our existence in the Northwest and in the West. And so I think that those things are dissonant. And then people have wanted to make the point to me about, like, you know, the Miami Hurricanes, the Carolina Hurricanes, the San Jose Earthquakes, and the Chicago Fire. And these are valid points. And I'm not saying that this is, you know, that you can't name a team after a natural disaster or something like that. For me, it's a matter of timing and tone. And what I would look at with, like, the Earthquakes, or I think the Hurricanes are a better example here, or the Chicago Fire. Chicago Fire refers to a specific event that happened, you know, a century before this team was formed, that the city rebuilt from. Like, it's a point in the city's history that everybody refers to, and it's like kind of foundational to the city's existence. Hurricanes are something that people in the Gulf region have lived with and is part of, like, the cultural identity there. Like, we persevere, like, we rebuild, we stick it out through hurricanes, and we're still here. So I think that, like, there is, like, an identity piece with those sorts of teams that are leaning on, like that use the natural disaster names, where I think there's some nuance. But again, wildfire as, like, an existential threat, you know, not just in rural regions, by the way. Like, we saw the fire that, you know, came through like Sandy and Malala, a cicada, I mean, a couple years ago, like, got very, very close to the Portland metro area. You know, Southern California, the Pacific Palisades fire, absolutely, you know, devastating. I mean, beyond anything we've ever seen in our state. So I think culturally, the experience we're having in the West with fire and with wildfire is evolving and growing more and more urgent. And so the decision to fall back on Fire, I don't think so the pros of Fire are nostalgia, existing brand identity. I don't think that outweighs just sort of the overarching concerns. And, like, and the other thing that I had issue with is that it made sense to name the team the Fire in 2000. Because the WNBA was new. It didn't have its own identity. And so you look at what most WNBA teams were named, they were somehow like a corollary to the NBA team. Yeah. And so, like, the Sacramento Kings, the Monarchs, the Suns, the Mercury, I'm trying to think of, like, early other teams, like,
I'm blanking on it too, but there's other ones.
The Hornets and the Sting, you know, they're just the Magic and the Orlando had a team that had a name that was the Wizards and the Mystics. Like, this has always been sort of like a symbiotic thing. And a lot of times those teams were owned by the same ownership groups as they were in Portland. So you had the Blazers and the Fire. Yeah. I think that is problematic in 2025 as the WNBA has, you know, become its own entity and has its own identity. And, like, we talk about, like, the empowerment and lifting up women's sports and separating women's sports from something that is is secondary to men's sports. I think the Fire sort of feeds into that original notion of little sibling or complementary to the NBA team, which makes way less sense in the moment we're living in terms of women's sports, but also the fact there's not common ownership. Like, it doesn't benefit the Bethals or Raj Sports to be, like, kind of cross promoting the Blazers and the Fire. Like, it doesn't make sense in that way. And so
I guess it could down the line, but yeah.
And that's true. Like, as somebody who wrote about the, you know, possibility of the Bethals being involved in, you know, a Blazers ownership group, sure. If they know something that they aren't sharing, we'd love to know. You can hit us up at OregonianSportsPodcast@gmail.com, or you could call Brenna on her personal line, 503-219-761142.
That's it.
We don't have a Gmail account, nor is that a real phone number, I hope. That'd be terrible if I accidentally gave it
well,
away.
also you said too many digits, so.
Yeah, that was the giveaway, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So, I mean, for me, it's just not good enough. You know what I mean? Like, and this is the point I made with somebody yesterday, like the argument that like other teams, have leaned on natural disasters to name teams and it's okay. Okay. I think there's some validity to that. The fact that, hey, like it's in your wheelhouse and like you're nostalgic for that team and like the retro branding like is cool. I think there's some validity to that. I just don't think that those outweigh the fact that the name sucks. And on top of that is pretty problematic. Like the name sucks.
I don't think it's problematic.
It's at least it's somewhat problematic. Like the fact that you're going to be going to a Fire game and you're going to be choking on smoke because of the fires throughout the summer. Like you don't think those things are dissonant? Imagine being in the newsroom at KOIN in the summer of 2026 and you're going to hear a producer say, "Hey, who do we have covering the fire tonight?" And you're not going to know whether they're talking about the one that is threatening your grandmother's house or the basketball game with an inflatable mascot doing the worm at halftime. I just think it's a miss.
I think that it's okay. Like, okay. I think that you made the point about other teams with natural disasters. Mm-hmm. And I mean, the same can be said in that sort of thing. Who's covering the Hurricanes tonight? And I understand your point of like, those are disasters that are closely associated with those areas. But I think people can separate things. And I personally, and to be fair, I was not super online yesterday, so I don't know, but I don't think that people are zeroed in on it like that. Overall, I think that this is something that you can separate in life. Your point about like little brother, little sister, I totally get that. However, I also say like, look at, like probably the most popular name that everybody wanted this team named, or not everybody, but a lot of people thought would make sense, was the Portland Roses. Do you think we're naming a men's sports team, the Portland Roses?
The hockey team is the Rosebuds.
Do you think that we're... Yeah, well, that's a predominantly female cheerleading squad.
I'm talking about like the early Portland hockey team that was the Rosebuds. Like,
no, I've never even heard of that before in my life. So yeah, sorry. There's that, or the Portland Swifts. Like that would have been closely associated with Taylor Swift. I don't know if you're necessarily naming a male sports team the Portland Swifts because of the colloquial association to that last name. So, I get what you're saying about the fact that the thing that I agree with you the most on is it's not a name that has any distinction for this region. I totally get that. And I wish that there could have been a way to figure that out. But I also think, as we both have acknowledged, I think they tried really hard to have a way to figure that out, and didn't happen. So I don't know. I guess I understand your point about the biggest thing that I just don't jive with is the natural disaster thing. I think that people can separate things and life's going to go on. So the other piece of this, and I think there are a lot of people who agree with you, and I've gotten emails from people on both sides of this. Like, I have been somewhat, and if you're new to this discussion, I wrote a column about it. It's in the Oregonian today. It's online. Yeah.
So I mean, there's certainly my thoughts are well represented there, and I've heard from a lot of people, and I'm maybe not surprised, but sort of impressed by the amount of passion that is behind this on both sides. Like
team names get people riled up.
Go check out Reddit. Like, there's a lot of people who are down on this name for reasons, kind of running the gamut of the things that we're talking about. And then there are people who feel the same as you. I think the other thing that, like, I mean, I don't know that this would be enough for me to call the name disqualifying, but like the images of Portland over the last 5 years that people of a certain political or cultural persuasion want to sort of hang on to.
That honestly
is of it as a
resonates more
burn,
with me
as
than
a
the
as a
wildfires.
burning, and but all in the column as a burning city, and it frankly just sort of writes the jokes for those people. Like the people who are most mad at me aren't the people who like think that like I'm being too gatekeepery over fires. The people who are most mad at me for the column are the frankly people who are coming at me with right-wing talking points and are mad at me for suggesting that Portland isn't a burning city, that like it's not a city on fire. And I think that I think that you are creating problems with this name. And so the other thing I want to say, and I hear you, we're not going to agree on this. My thing with this is if there is still a discussion to be had on the name, and I would venture to guess that there isn't, given what we've seen and what we know.
Yeah.
I wanted the opportunity to make the case that it's not a good name. And I hope that they're having these conversations internally and that they're hearing what I'm saying, because I'm not the only person saying it. But the other thing I wanted to say that is separate from that point is that a sports franchise, a professional sports franchise, is maybe the best marketing tool a city, state, region has. Mm-hmm. It helps build an identity to people who otherwise might not be familiar with your state, city, region, who may not have thought to visit, who may not know what it's all about. And it is a sports franchise is an outreached arm. It's an invitation. Like, come check us out, come meet us where we are, and this is what we're offering you. And so I think that it is important when you're naming one of those teams that you are giving something that is an introduction or an invitation or is evocative of what your city, state, region is or represents. And I don't know how far down the list of rejected names you would have to get before I would say that Portland Fire is a good representation of Portland, Oregon. It's not. And so I think it is a missed opportunity by the Bethals, who have been here and are doing a lot. They're doing a lot of good. I'm not trying to just slam the Bethals, but who've been here for about 18 months and maybe aren't as fluent in the region, in the qualities and symbols that make us unique and make us Portland. And I think it's a missed opportunity by them and a misread of the room by the WNBA to not find something that represents like Portland better. And so I'm passionate about it because of that, because I think it's a missed opportunity. I'm passionate about it because I think it is out of touch with like our current moment and what fire represents. Like, there are 56 homes that burned down last week, an hour from Portland. And I'm not trying to be dramatic about this. I just think that those things are dissonant. And for me, it would have been a stay away because of all of the things that it brings in that do not promote my team positively, that don't promote the city positively. I don't think the Portland Fire tells a story about Portland. Like, we're not in an era where you just name a team the Eagles. You know, like, it's just, you know, like
you need more thought into it.
Well, what story does Fire tell about Portland? It doesn't tell a story. It's a name that they fell back on because they didn't have anything better or they couldn't get anything better. And I just don't think that's good enough. Go ahead.
Can I ask you what you kind of settled on in your mind as what the team name you wanted was?
I don't have one.
Okay.
I really don't have one. And I think that, you know, there's all sorts of things that are potentially problematic, right? Like, you could parse a lot of things into something that's problematic. I do like the Swifts, and I understand the point. I think you're just selling a shit ton of jerseys. And again, maybe they got locked out on that because of Taylor Swift. I don't know. It would be interesting to know. It obviously wouldn't work in the team's favor. And by the way, PR 101, Lisa Bethal Mirage, maybe don't say, oh, all of our top choices have been rejected, so that when you do announce your team name, people aren't like, well, it was their 7th or 8th choice anyway. Like, not great in terms of building excitement for the name. But like, I like the Swifts. I like what that represents. Movement, like speed. Like, I think that it's evocative of a lot of things. Like, it's a cultural touchstone in Portland. I think it's a little bit, it's stylish in terms of like, the movement and pace with which the game is played. So I was on board with that. I would have been okay with that. I liked something that drew on the sort of spirit of the city, and like whether you want to call it like resolve, persistence, progress. But there are, like the progress. I don't know that quite works, but something kind of really, that reminds me of something that sort of, it reminds you of what?
Soup.
Really?
Progresso.
I understand. I don't know that's where I would have gone. I'm okay with you not liking it. I'm not sure I would have gone Dan Campbell is a good coach with the Detroit Lions, but like, okay. Yeah. But anyway, that's that sort of spirit. Like, I wrote an entire column back in whenever they announced that this team was coming, October maybe. And like a lot of those names that I threw out there sucked. I don't think they all did. I think some of them like at least were like on the right track, where you talk about like, the Portlandia statue on the Portland building, the fact that that one of the state animals of Oregon is the Triton, and there is a trident on the Portlandia statue. Is there something to be done there? The poem that's on the statue, which is a symbol of Portland, is about the journey of the city, the journey. Like, I think that there's just terms and ideals that do represent Portland. And by the way, like, one of the most progressive, weird, creative cities in the entire country just deserves better than sort of a generic name. So we'll see. We'll see if this is where they landed and this is what they announced. I suspect they will. We talked about, or at least alluded to the fact that there are reasons why you might want to get this licensing underway, even if it wasn't necessarily the final decision. And, the Washington Commanders, before they settled on Commanders, trademarked, I want to say like 7 or 8 names. So it wasn't necessarily a great barometer of which way they were leaning. Haven't seen anything else. I've looked that the WNBA has trademarked. Seems like they're pretty far down the road with this one. And so, until we hear differently, I think that this is at least a safe assumption. But obviously it's my opinion that if there's still time to reconsider, I think they should.
I guess at least if we're going national, what do you think about the tsunami? I feel like that's more so. Yeah.
Sure. I don't have a problem. So this kind of gets to like the kind of the nuance around the natural disaster question. Yep. Like, I'm not offended or bothered by tsunami because, like, a third of the Oregon coast hasn't been wiped out by a tsunami in like our lifetimes. Yeah. Now, like, I did include in this column, like, I wouldn't have named a new team post Katrina in New Orleans the Tide. I wouldn't have named a team in 2011 in Japan after the Fukushima disaster, the Wave. It's just like, I think, again, timing, tone. Tsunami doesn't offend me in the way that fire bothers me. Yeah. Like, at one point I suggested that they should name the Oregon State rivalry game the really big one because of the Cascadia Fault, which, according to the New Yorker, is going to wipe out everything west of I-5. So, I think you can have a little bit of like, be a little tongue in cheek about some of these things. I just don't think there's anything tongue in cheek about the fire. It just feels like a very unintentionally, persistently problematic name. But I'm going to enjoy watching the team. I'm going to go to the games. I'm going to take my kids to the games. I just would have chosen a better name.
Well, there you go. I understand your point. I think the point that resonates the most with me on your end is, like I said, wanting something a little bit more uniquely Portland. And
I wonder who in the room is providing that feedback, just because it's a really skeleton crew right now. Yep. The team has a president and not much more. Inky Sun has not been, is not does not have Portland roots, does not have, she's new to town. The Bethals are new to town. I don't think
Inky was really super involved in the naming of the team as well. I mean, she hasn't been around that long. This has been going on for a lot longer than that.
Sure. I'm just saying that she's several months in at this point, so it's not like she's not involved. But I would say that this is a relatively small team right now. They haven't hired out. They don't have, I don't know who is providing like the Portland perspective in that room, because it's not coming from the Bethals. It's not coming from the WNBA. And so I do wonder if there is a certain voice representing the city and the region that isn't being heard there. But again, if the team's going to be named the Fire, I will enjoy the hell out of those games. Okay, here's another example. The Indiana Fever is an amazing name. Amazing name. Like basketball fever, Indiana, what a hotbed for basketball. The Indiana Fever is an amazing name. It would not have been a good name for an expansion team in 2021.
Yes. Well,
would not have been.
In 2021, yes.
Timing and tone. But, all right. Speaking of timing, there is no better time, Brenna, than now for us to get a recap on your week in Omaha. With the Oregon State Beavers at Charles Schwab Stadium. As I said at the top, the Beavers went 1-2 in Omaha, played some absolute banger games, nearly gave away their opener to Louisville. Kind of hung around with Coastal Carolina, but shot themselves in the foot way too many times. And then, that final game against Louisville, I'm watching on TV. I'm sure you have insight that, I don't have here, but another dramatic comeback in the ninth, just like we saw them have against Florida State, tie the game and lose in the bottom of the ninth. Season over, the end of some really great Beavers baseball careers. Ivar Arquette, 1-year career, Gavin Turley, kind of the end of a chapter in Beaver history, capstone to, the first independent season, remarkable run by the Beavers. What did you think of their stay in Omaha? And did you get what did we determine the
did not get cuisine? A runza.
No. The Beavers really could have used more runs with more hits with runzers. The Beavers could have used more runza. If they'd scored more runza, they would have won the games.
If they would have got more runzas in scoring position across home plate, that would have helped. Because they were, I believe my math is correct here, 2 for 27.
Yeah, what did
in
I have?
runs in scoring, runners in scoring position.
Terrible.
You are not, the fact that they won one game in Omaha with that stat is astounding. I mean that's all you need to know.
2 for 27, and they left 12 runners on base in the game against Louisville on whatever the last day we played was, Tuesday.
Infuriating. It was an infuriating team to watch in Omaha. I'm not gonna lie, because you're just like, I just saw you put up 14 runs the other day, and now we're here. It was wild. And it's not like that ballpark is a little bit bigger than Goss. It's about give or take 10 feet bigger.
Oh, you mean the dimensions of the field? I was gonna be like, yes. I think the stadium's a lot bigger. Yes. Okay.
The dimensions of the field. But it was just a very difficult team to watch in Omaha, because you know what their capabilities are, and they were most definitely not living up to said capabilities. So, and I really think that pitching staff did the best that they could do. It wasn't perfect by any means, but I think they did a good job.
I thought the pitching staff did well. I mean, you look at Coastal. I mean, Coastal only had 2 earned runs in that game.
Yeah.
There were errors, there were miscues, and at least one of the earned runs was after a hit by pitch. Like, it was just a very uncharacteristically sloppy defensive appearance as well. Like, I mean, not what you'd expect.
No. And I guess if you're an Oregon State fan, I think the number one thing that gives you hope about next season is you're returning your top 2 pitchers, and really you're returning all of your pitchers. I do not know if, obviously Nelson Keljo has a decision to make if he wants to go or wants to stay. I think he would be served well by staying personally. I think he could really up his stock if he gets another good year underneath his belt, because the end of this year just probably wasn't. There were some really good moments and there were some moments that weren't as great, So, I think that you could see a pretty much intact Beavers pitching staff next year, which is fantastic for them. The number one thing that they're going to have to figure out is their infield and a few, hitters. But it was just a really frustrating team to watch, because their capabilities and you knew that they were way underperforming for what their capabilities are. So
can we take just a pause though? Because you're completely right. I mean, like, the production in Omaha was so uncharacteristic and not what we would have expected. Like, I mean, Coastal Carolina was a load, and I don't know what would have happened if the Beavers had gotten to them again, because I would have probably favored the Beavers pitching. Again, knowing what little I know about Coastal Carolina, but they weren't going to see the pitcher who absolutely mowed them down in that first game. Like, I felt good about the Beavers getting on the right side of things. If they could have just gotten back to Coastal Carolina, I think they could have gotten it to a final elimination game. Maybe gotten to the final. But I do want to take a moment just to appreciate kind of the obvious here, which is that the Beavers got back to Omaha, and that is a enormous achievement, obviously, for any team. Like, Oregon can tell you how hard it is and how perilous that road is. But broken record here, but for all that's happened at Oregon State in the last year and a half, nearly 2 years, and every program that has fallen apart, huge shout out to Mitch Canham, Scott Barnes, the coaching staff. One, for sort of the nerve and kind of the audacity to say we're going to play an independent schedule and to play every meaningful series basically of the year on the road. And then to, fight back from, a bad loss in the regional and what looked like a sure loss in game 1 of the super regional, to get to Omaha for where this school has been and for where this program's been and where it's going. I think it's just so meaningful. Like, I don't know who next year's Iva Arquette is, or what player is the, going to be the hot transfer, or who is considering signing with the Beavers out of high school, a la Dax Whitney. But the Beavers acquitted themselves so well this year, and they validated every decision that they made along the way. And it to me bodes so well for the future of this program, because there will be stability. And, for the school, the Pac-12 is going to, come together, maybe in the coming days. And over time, I think that a lot of this unrest and, like, we're going to stop talking about things in the terms of, like, after all this school has been through in the last year. But for the Beavers baseball program to navigate this as well as it has, and to get the payoff of reaching Omaha is just enormous. And the Beavers measure things in national championships now. That's just where they've raised the bar so high. But in college baseball, getting to Omaha is still the thing. Like, that is still the, like, line of demarcation of, like, great elite program, average program, whatever. And so for them to still be at that level, to show that they are still, perfect word, elite, huge validation for Mitch Canham. And, players are going to still want to play there. It paid off. And I think that nothing could be bigger for them than that, short of winning a national championship. So I don't want to lose sight of that as we do talk about the fact that they kind of stunk it up in Omaha, and they deserve to lose, and they probably deserve to lose in 2 games, not 3.
But I mean, overall, it was a cool event to cover. Not something I ever expected to really cover in my career. So I like how things are spaced out there. It's not like, I love the 4 games in one day of the NCAA tournament. It's so much fun, but it was also fun to just kind of, like, have things kind of, go at a pace. So it was a fun, cool event that, if you ever have the opportunity to go, I would do it.
Mm-hmm.
Just I mean, just from the standpoint of like even like the SEC fan bases are just insane. You know, Oregon State's fan base is never going to rival LSU and Arkansas. Like
just in terms of like in-game like enthusiasm, participation, size,
the tonnage.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many of them there. They're like ants. So yeah, cool experience. Glad I got to do it. Wish the Beavers bats would have showed up.
Yeah.
You know, but like you said, you know, and that was what I talked about in my final piece that I, you know, did from Omaha was, you know, hey, like the fact that this team made it here this year in particular is a very good sign for the program going forward, but B, just a good beacon of hope. And by the way, you know, if I'm Oregon State, like, I mean, I guess I don't know. Not all the teams that are joining the Pac-12 have baseball teams.
Totally. They might stay independent.
Yeah.
But like even to the point of like stabilizing once that becomes the norm and you have like years of
yes,
building those schedules. Like, I mean, I don't know. It seems like a really treacherous way to live, but like, yes, you're right. I don't know that the Pac-12 is going to be a baseball conference.
Yeah. I mean, they just, first of all, don't have enough teams, but secondly, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what you do there. I forget how many teams do they have. They've had them. They have seven
football schools. They have 7 football schools. Gonzaga makes 8, and they need an 8th football school.
And well, I'm thinking about athletic
baseball
departments
schools
with baseball teams. So you
Fresno,
have Fresno, Gonzaga,
yep,
Washington State, them, San Diego State. They're normally pretty good at baseball.
Mm-hmm.
Colorado State, I do not believe has a team. Boise State most definitely doesn't have a team because COVID got rid of their team.
I'm pretty sure Utah State doesn't.
I don't think they do either. As somebody who used to cover the Mountain West, I knew I kind of know who has teams in that conference.
Yeah, I mean, when we were sitting around talking about, you know, do the Beavers just join the Mountain West, you know, or is it like kind of a reverse merger or whatever? You know, that was one of the key concerns with the Mountain West is like it's not a baseball conference. So I mean, do the Beavers play as the Notre Dame of baseball? I mean, this is not a sourced observation, but like, do they join as a baseball only member of I hate to say this in this way, but like a real conference? Like, does that possibility exist down the road?
Yeah.
That would make some sense. But the travel piece of it is a real boondoggle too.
Well, I mean, and so basically, you know, my in summation point of this is that whatever has happened this year, it sets them up well for years to come and gives them more options than maybe they would have had if they hadn't gone to Omaha.
100% agree with you. I think that is undeniable.
Yeah.
One thing that just kind of popped in my head that I wanted to make a point to our earlier conversation, and I don't think it needs any conversation, but just to the point that like the fire, the WNBA could be just kind of reclaiming their intellectual property for, you know, retro stuff or whatever. Once the WNBA team's back up and running, I mean, one of the things they trademarked was a new logo, or certainly what appears to be a logo, a symbol of the team, a stylized P. It looks kind of like the Pittsburgh Pirates. Like it, don't like it. This wasn't a case of them like, you know, re-trademarking all the old stuff, you know, which might have indicated more of like, oh, we want to have all this at our disposal kind of for whatever our team is named. So that would just be sort of a clue that things are barreling forward. Yet another clue that things are barreling forward toward that brand identity. Okay. The other thing that I want to touch on before we get out of here and before you, by the way, did you find someone to watch your cat, by the way? I feel like this came up on the podcast last week that you were slammed getting to Omaha last minute and hadn't even had time to like consider like who's going to cat sit.
Yes. Someone did watch my gato. I need to pay said person, but yes.
Okay.
So,
That's
yeah.
good. That's an important detail. Okay. So we are now, I want to say 5 days away from the Portland Trailblazers drafting 11th in the NBA draft. We are 2 days away from Game 7 in an NBA Finals that I have loved every single minute that I have been able to watch of. I think the Indiana Pacers, Brenna, playing well, acquitting themselves well, getting this series to 7 games has been an amazing win for teams like the Portland Trailblazers that are not going to win, or excuse me, are not going to sign a superstar free agent, who, are not a destination, who are going to have to build gradually, because the Pacers represent a form of team building that, at least in theory, anybody should be able to do. Tyrese Halliburton is a superstar. So I'm not saying that they don't have a superstar at the center of the whole thing. They do, and you're going to need that. That said, Tyrese Halliburton is a 2-time All-NBA third-team player. Like, he's not Shea. He's not LeBron.
Yeah.
He's not Kevin Durant. And recent history would suggest you don't necessarily need that player to win. And I think that the Pacers doing it with, 2 really good players, 2 really excellent perennial all-star type players, and then a ton of kick-ass role players, is the new model in the NBA, and is at least theoretically replicable for teams like the Blazers. So I think it is a win for Portland, and I think it will help the Blazers tell a story to their fan base about how they are trying to build, and why it's okay to get incrementally better next year, and why it doesn't have to be a superstar addition or bust. Are you picking up what I'm putting down here? And has this finals, or this Pacers run specifically, because we all knew the Thunder were going to be good, and the Thunder are a small market team with tons of like balance and tons of depth and all that too, but it's just unfair because the Thunder have been building toward this moment for like 18 years. People on the internet have traced this back to the Kurt Thomas trade when the Thunder were still in Seattle. So I don't know that you can look at the Thunder and be like, oh, the Thunder, we're a small market team. Let's just do that. Let's just do what they did. But with the Pacers, who have traded 2 All-NBA players in the last 8 years and kind of adjusted on the fly and never truly sucked, like never truly tanked. Their highest pick in the last 5 years was 6. That does seem like something that teams could do. So the floor is yours to tell me why I'm wrong again.
No, I'm not going to tell you why you're wrong. No, I totally get where you're coming from. I'm trying to think of the last time the Blazers made a trade for somebody like a Pascal Siakam.
It's the trade they wouldn't make. It's the trade they did not make when they had Dame, or when they were figuring out what to do with CJ. By the time they traded CJ, and Joe Cronin came in and basically had to clean up the financial mess that the Blazers had, because the team wasn't good enough and the team was way too expensive. So I meant trading CJ, trading Norm Powell, trading Robert Covington. You weren't trading those players. You were never buying. Like, the Blazers haven't been buyers in recent memory. Like, traded 2 firsts for Robert Covington, didn't pan out. They were buyers for Denny Advia. Like, otherwise they haven't been buyers. But the way that the Pacers did it, I don't think anybody was prepared for. I went back and looked. Where do you think that? Okay, we all know that betting odds are not like actually predictive, but like, where do you think that the Pacers ranked in odds to win the championship coming into the season?
I know it wasn't good.
Yeah. And this is a team that made the Eastern Conference Finals last year, by the way.
Just tell me. I have no clue.
17th in a 30-team league, 1 spot below the New Orleans Pelicans, and tied with the Sacramento Kings.
Jesus.
Vegas, whoever that is, thought that the Pacers had as good of a chance of being here as the Sacramento Kings did. So now a lot of that has to do with perception of a team. Like nobody's paying attention to the Pacers until the Pacers make you pay attention to them. Even going to the Eastern Conference Finals and getting, kind of trucked by the Celtics. It's like, okay, whatever, kind of a fluke. It wasn't. So I just think that this is the sort of thing that is going to help recalibrate the way NBA fans look at, team building and give some cover, I think, to a GM like Joe Cronin, who, makes a move that makes his team a little bit better. Now, a counterpoint here, and something I included in the column that I wrote today that you can read at Oregon Live, is I do think that it creates cover for teams that are kind of stuck in the middle and not really doing anything to get out of it. Where it's like, oh, well, hold on. We're doing what the Pacers did. We're getting a little bit better year by year. So if it worked for the Pacers, don't hold us too much to account here because we know what we're doing. It worked for the Pacers. So I think you have to be a little bit mindful of that. But I do think that this is good for a team like Portland that, has some really quality role players, doesn't have a direct path to success, but has some pieces that, you like that they can sort of build with. I wouldn't quite say build around, but you can build with Danny Advia and Tumani Kamara. And then when you have the opportunity to go get the Pascal Siakam, or you have, made a move that nets you Tyrese, we're underselling Tyrese Halliburton in this conversation, but just stick with me, to get a Tyrese Halliburton type player, or one of your young guys develops into a Tyrese Halliburton type player, you're ready to go. And I think that is more the model of team building in 2025 than, obviously the big three model is dead. The CBA doesn't allow that anymore. That was never going to happen in Portland anyway. And then, we've seen tanking backfire so much more often than we've seen it pay off with the flattened odds. So I kind of think the boom or bust strategy in the NBA is dead. And, you've been around the league enough. Like you've heard people say the worst place you can be in the NBA is in the middle. That you need to either be really good or so you're winning, or really bad so you're in the lottery. And I'm starting to think
tanking doesn't do anything.
The middle might be the best place to be in the NBA.
Yeah, well, let's look at what happened with the draft lottery this year. Let's look at, the fact that you just mentioned, the CBA now really doesn't allow for you to have three superstars on your team anymore. Not max guys.
No. You can get really, really lucky. The Thunder have three superstars, but they're going to be in trouble financially soon.
Yes, exactly. You have a window if you have that sort of situation, and that's because you got lucky and they were all rookies when they came in, Not all rookies, but yeah. So
you got Shea on a rookie contract. You drafted Jalen Williams. Chet's not a superstar yet, but he's probably on his way. And he's on a rookie contract because you drafted him. All your supporting guys are mostly on rookie scale contracts. Anyway, but yes, you're 100%
so,
right.
Yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying, because at this point it feels like tanking doesn't help you win in terms of getting better draft picks. And at least the last few years have told us that. And, it definitely doesn't help you win in terms of getting free agent signings. So then what are we doing here?
And look at the number of teams that have tried to win via the splashy trade, right? The Lakers are going to be fine, especially with an infusion of, a $10 billion valuation and Mark Walters, ownership. But, they get Luka Doncic, and late in the regular season, a lot of credible people were like, this is a championship team. Didn't work. What the Suns did, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, didn't work. How many super teams has James Harden been a part of? And how many championships has James Harden won? How many finals has James Harden played in? Look at the Clippers. Obviously that includes James Harden, but the Kawhi Paul George thing never worked. So superstar chasing also doesn't work. So tanking doesn't work, and superstar chasing isn't working anymore.
Indiana did trade for Tyrese, and they traded for Pascal Siakam, but
and I don't want to minimize how good those guys are, but neither of them have ever been a first team All NBA player.
Yes.
And I think that I've talked about this before, maybe on the podcast, but when we sit around and we fantasy GM the Blazers, or we talk about how do the Blazers get to contention, and I'm as guilty of this as anybody. It's always who's their superstar? They need a superstar. They need a superstar. They need a superstar. And you do need a star. You need a star level player. Tyrese Halliburton is a star. But when we sat around and we gamed this out and we throw around names, we're like, who's good enough? Who's that player that you could build around, that's worth going all in for, to build around, and you can maybe win a championship? Probably not putting Tyrese Halliburton on that list. I'm not putting Pascal Siakam on that list.
Yep.
But like, he's also the number 2. So I do think that like the fact that they are doing this with 2 all-stars, but not 2 megastars, not 2, neither of them has the profile of Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. It's that the Pacers have done everything else right around the 2 guys they have. And that's the TJ McConnell, Aaron Nesmith, Andrew Nembhard, Tony Bradley's, being super valuable. They didn't give up on Miles Turner when I think everybody assumed Miles Turner was going to bounce, go somewhere else. Like, Miles Turner has, settled into a really meaningful role. I don't know. It's just, I think it's just such a fascinating study. I think it's a much better model for how teams are going to win in going forward. Now, of course, this is all going to get blown to pieces when Kevin Durant gets traded to the Spurs or doesn't get traded to the Spurs, and the Spurs win the next 5 championships anyway. Like, it's gonna be like, oh, Bill, remember when you thought that you didn't need a superstar to win, and Victor Wembanyama has won 93 straight championships? Like, that take aged really well. But at least in theory, and in terms of sustainability, Pacers are doing it right. And I think that's the blueprint.
Another quick NBA thing, but something that I'm just personally intrigued on. As somebody who was around the Lakers organization for as long as you were, what was your reaction to that news this week?
I mean, I am sure that like somebody should have dropped at least like a cool $10 million walking around that building while I was there. If that thing was worth $10 billion, like, my goodness, that I could have picked up and used for my own devices. Well, so when I was there when Mark Walter bought in as a minority owner, about 20%. And it was known then that his deal included like a right of first refusal to buy the majority stake. Mm-hmm. So it was a question of kind of when, I think. But I think I see this more as like a passing of the torch and kind of like what an NBA owner looks like. Because I think that Jeannie Buss and her family were kind of the last bastion of this like family engaged ownership, where it's like, I mean, owning the team was the business. I mean, it's not like, I mean, Jerry Buss made his money in real estate and then bought the Lakers, but like the family business was the Lakers, and it was the Kings, and, then they sold the Kings, but like, that's what the family did, was the Lakers. And that led to such a level of care and engagement and like real like involvement that I just don't think we're going to see in professional sports anymore. I mean, obviously these teams are obscenely expensive. I mean, if you look at these lists, they're all like, oh, the most expensive valuations of NBA teams that have ever been sold. It's the Lakers at 10 billion. It's the Celtics last year at 6 point whatever. And it's the Dallas Mavericks at 4 2 years ago. The Blazers, I think we can all pretty safely agree, are like probably in the bottom, let's just say bottom half in terms of value of NBA teams. Blazers are for sale. People seem to think that the Blazers are going to sell for right around $4 billion. So when that happens, like the Blazers could easily sell for the 3rd highest value of any NBA team in history, because these things have grown so exponentially. Yeah. And I think that we all want to sit around and be like, oh, who's the local owner who's going to come in and be the, be this great owner for the Blazers?
Yeah,
and,
it's
highly
likely it won't be that.
There's really not that money here, but there's also really not that money almost anywhere, where it's like, you're going to have the Mark Cuban type owner who, it just, I think there's going to be so much diversity in what that ownership looks like. Obviously there will be a principal owner, there will be a governor, but I just think you're losing sort of and I think sports lost this a long time ago, but seeing the Lakers lose it is kind of like the last sort of breath of it, is like this like personal touch and of personal care. A lot of decisions got made by the Lakers, because Jeannie wanted to do right by the players. Like, she was personally connected and personally invested. And like, for her, it was, what would Dr. Buss have wanted? And how do the Lakers take care of their people? And Jeannie cared very much about that. And I don't think that the franchise always hit the mark. I was very critical of them. You'll be shocked to learn. But
what?
the sincerity with which she has run that organization. And I think it's, I think it's great that she's going to remain the governor. She's going to remain, very involved, but like, obviously that's going to sunset at some point.
Yes.
And so I just think the NBA, I think sports are losing something. I did spend some time considering, whether this sale meant anything for the Blazers sale. I don't think it does from the standpoint of value, because the Lakers are a priceless asset.
Yes.
Like, you could have told me that somebody had bought the Lakers for $15 billion. I'd be like, yeah, that's probably reasonable. Because how do you put a price on owning that history, owning that legacy, owning that brand? Like you own, like now you own this. I don't like the way this sounds, but like, you own the history. So you own the history of Kobe Bryant, Magic Johnson, Shaquille O'Neal, Wilt Chamberlain, Jerry West, Gail Goodrich, Elgin Baylor, George Mikan. Like, that is now under your stewardship. And it's like, that is one of the most valuable, stories that's ever been told in sports and continues to be told. And like, I think there've been some really good points. I thought ESPN had an exceptional article on this about sort of how the Lakers, for as glamorous and glitzy the Lakers are, and I mean, no question, the most glamorous in all of sports, they have had to operate really around the margins. A lot of penny pinching has a really negative connotation, but like, a lot of really financially conscious decisions have been made over the years. Not wanting to go into the luxury tax for Alex Caruso, losing Tyronn Lue because you didn't want to pay an extra, year on a contract. A lot of that comes from the fact, like, they did not have endless money at their disposal to throw around, and it'd like be, the big swinging operators of the NBA, the way that Steve Ballmer is. And so I think the juxtaposition between like what the Lakers represented and how they actually had to operate financially is really interesting. And Mark Walter's going to come in.
It's a good point.
And other people have made this. I mean, it's great. It's a great piece on ESPN. Dave McMenamin and Tim Bontemps wrote it, for anybody who I do not want to take credit for their reporting and analysis, but it's certainly consistent with what I saw when I was there. And Mark Walter, I mean, what do the Dodgers do? This guy owns the Dodgers. What do the Dodgers do? They blow through every spending threshold that has ever existed. And like, Shohei Ohtani just got like a $55 billion contract, $700 million. Like, you bring that, obviously there's a salary cap in basketball, and there's less that you can like actually.
Like, there's a cap,
right? But there's not a salary cap on assistant coaches. There's not a salary cap on. I mean, the Lakers facility is already state of the art, but there's not a salary cap on. Do the Lakers want to have their own arena? Do they want to do something different than Staples Center, for example? There's suddenly like the world is their oyster in terms of spending in all the ways. Like the luxury tax, maybe that's not going to be a problem. Maybe that's not going to be a deterrent. So I think, there is this also goes back to the point about like, building, find your own Aaron Nesmith. It's like the Lakers might just come in and outspend everybody with a devil may care attitude and figure it out. And we'll be back to the world where the Lakers are winning everything. And why does anybody else try? We'll see. But I think it's sad from the standpoint of losing sort of that personal touch on ownership, because I don't know that exists anymore outside of, for better or worse, like Jerry Jones.
Ursay's. Yeah.
Okay, Brenna, I am going to go to the Cannon Beach Sandcastle Festival this weekend. I will report back next week with the best sandcastles that I see
I
in
can't
Cannon
wait.
Beach. But I hope that you recover well from your adventures in Omaha, if there are adventures in Omaha, and we'll regroup in probably next week. We have an NBA draft. We have a draft next week. We'll probably regroup next week.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Maybe we'll know more about the WNBA team name by then.
I think if we regroup next week, I will be coming. I don't know. I'm still hasn't made my decision, but I may be coming at you live from one of your favorite mascot towns names. So, favorite mascot names towns. Yeah, there we go.
You're gonna be in Missoula? Am I
No.
misunderstanding? I'm misunderstanding the reference. Where are you gonna be?
I might be in Lakeview next week, so we'll see.
Oh, the Honkers! Love the Honkers. Oh,
Yeah,
by the
so-
way, hold on. Shoot, we were almost out of here. We were almost done. Did you know? I did not know this, but after we talked about mascots last week, I did get an email from listener John Scanlon. I'm so glad that we brought this up. who informed me that the original mascot of Cleveland High School was the Stenographers.
Oh, that's great.
And that we should have shouted that out. So shout out to the Stenographers and to John Scanlon. Thank you for contributing. And we'll look forward to more contributions from listeners. Hit us up with those. In the meantime, Brenna, have a great weekend, and we'll talk next week.
Sounds good.